There's a certain magic to the back roads of Kentucky, a feeling you just can't find on the main motorways. It's a quiet, almost mournful beauty. You drive past rolling hills, see the morning mist clinging to old tobacco fields, and you can't help but slow down. These are the roads that lead to places forgotten by time, places where the hum of modern life fades away, replaced by the whisper of the wind through broken window panes. These aren't just empty spaces, they are graveyards of ambition, filled with the ghosts of dreams and the stories of hardworking people who once called these places home. It's a strange sort of pilgrimage, driving down a dusty track to find what's left of a town that has all but vanished from the map. Sometimes, all you'll find is a crumbling stone foundation, nearly swallowed by ivy and Queen Anne's lace. Other times, a row of dilapidated storefronts stands like silent sentinels, their paint peeling and signs faded beyond recognition. You might see an old church, its steeple still pointing to the heavens, even as the floorboards inside have rotted away. These remnants tell a powerful story. They speak of a time when a river, a railway line, or a rich seam of coal could give birth to a thriving community. They tell of the people who built their lives here, raised their families, and believed in a future that, for one reason or another, never quite arrived. The air in these places feels different. It's thick with nostalgia and a quiet sadness. You can almost hear the echoes of the past, the clang of a blacksmith's hammer, the laughter of children playing in a dusty street, the whistle of a steam train arriving at the depot. These towns are more than just collections of abandoned buildings, they are time capsules. They hold on to the memories of the lives lived within them, the struggles faced, and the hopes that once burned so brightly. Exploring them is like turning the pages of a history book, but this book is written in wood, brick, and stone, and its pages are scattered across the Kentucky countryside. My job has taken me to some pretty out-of-the-way places, and I've learned that the real story is often found where you least expect it. It's not in the gleaming skyscrapers or the bustling city centers. It's in the quiet corners, the forgotten towns where people worked hard and lived honest lives. These ghost towns are a tribute to that spirit. They remind us that nothing is permanent, that economies shift, and that progress often leaves things behind. But they also show us that the stories, the memories, and the spirit of the people who lived there can endure, waiting for someone to come along and listen. Deep in Muhlenberg County, along the Green River, there once was a town with a name that promised so much: Paradise. It's a name that a lot of folks know thanks to the famous John Prine song. He sang about a place where the air was sweet and the living was good. Paradise started as a small trading post in the early 1800s, a simple place called Stom's Landing. Over time, it grew. The river brought trade, and the fertile land was perfect for farming. For generations, people lived a quiet rural life here, connected to the land and the water. It was the kind of place that felt like it would be there forever. The town truly came into its own with the arrival of the coal industry. The ground beneath Paradise was rich with black gold, and the demand for energy was growing. The Tennessee Valley Authority, or TVA, saw the potential. In the late 1950s, they decided to build one of the largest coal-fired power plants in the world, right there. For a while, it seemed like a blessing. The plant brought jobs and a sense of importance to this small corner of Kentucky. But this progress came at a terrible cost. The very thing that was meant to power the nation was slowly poisoning the town it was named after. The problem was the fly ash. The plant's smokestacks billowed out toxic particles that settled over everything. It coated the houses, the gardens, and the lungs of the people who lived there. The paradise that John Prine sang about was disappearing under a layer of industrial dust. The TVA, faced with a growing health crisis and the immense cost of cleaning up the pollution, made a difficult decision. Instead of fixing the problem, they decided to remove the town. Starting in the late 1960s, they bought every single property, house by house, until no one was left. The town of Paradise was officially erased. Today, there's nothing left of the original town. The power plant itself was eventually demolished in 2020, its giant smokestacks brought down in a cloud of dust, a final ironic end. Where homes and yards once stood, there is now just empty, reclaimed land. The story of Paradise is a powerful lesson. It's a sad tale of a community sacrificed for the sake of cheap energy. All that remains are the memories of former residents and a haunting song that tells the world what was lost. It reminds us that progress isn't always progress, especially when it costs a community its very existence. Tucked away in the Big South Fork National River and Recreation Area, you'll find a place called Blue Heron, also known as Mine 18. This wasn't a town in the traditional sense, with a mayor and a high street. It was a company town, built for one reason, and one reason only: to pull coal out of the ground. From 1937 to 1962, the Stearns Coal and Lumber Company ran the show here. They owned everything: the houses, the school, the church, and the company store. The miners who lived here with their families were completely dependent on the company for their livelihoods and their day-to-day needs. Life in Blue Heron was tough. The men worked long, dangerous hours deep inside the mine, facing the constant threat of cave-ins and black lung disease. The families lived in simple, identical houses perched on the steep hillside, yet despite the hardship, a strong sense of community developed. People relied on each other. Neighbors were more like family, sharing what little they had and supporting one another through good times and bad. They created a life here, finding joy in church gatherings, school events, and the simple beauty of the surrounding mountains. It was a life defined by hard work, but also by resilience and fellowship. The end for Blue Heron came when the coal seam ran out. By 1962, it was no longer profitable for the Stearns Company to keep the mine open. Without the mine, there was no reason for the town to exist. The company shut it all down, and the families had to pack up and leave, searching for work elsewhere. For years, the town sat empty and slowly decayed, the buildings surrendering to the relentless advance of nature. The forest began to reclaim what it had lost, and the story of Blue Heron was almost forgotten, another casualty of the boom and bust cycle of coal. But the story doesn't end there. In the 1980s, the National Park Service did something remarkable. They didn't let Blue Heron vanish completely. Instead, they turned it into an outdoor museum. They cleared the overgrowth and built open-air steel structures, or ghost buildings, on the original foundations of the town. Each structure has audio stations where you can listen to the recorded memories of the people who actually lived and worked here. You can walk through the ghost tipple, stand where the church once stood, and hear the voices of the past tell their own stories. It's a powerful, haunting tribute to the coal mining life. When you talk about coal in Kentucky, you have to talk about Harlan County. And in Harlan, you have to talk about the city of Lynch. In its heyday, Lynch was something to behold. It was built in 1917 by U.S. Coal and Coke, a subsidiary of U.S. Steel. They didn't just build a mining camp, they built the largest coal camp in the world. They constructed a modern city in the middle of the mountains, with a state-of-the-art hospital, a grand hotel, and even a cinema. At its peak, Lynch was home to over 10,000 people from dozens of different nationalities, all drawn by the promise of work in the mines. Harlan County became infamous for its violent labor disputes in the 1930s, earning it the name Bloody Harlan. The miners fought for better wages, safer working conditions, and the right to unionize. It was a brutal struggle between the workers and the powerful coal companies. While Lynch was often seen as a model company town, with better facilities, it was still part of this larger conflict. The lives of the people here were shaped by the company's control and the ever-present dangers of the mine. The town's impressive buildings stood in stark contrast to the difficult lives of the men who went underground each day. The decline began, as it so often did, with the mechanization of the coal industry. New machines could do the work of many men, and the demand for a large workforce dwindled. The mines started to close down one by one. U.S. Steel sold the town in the 1950s, and people began to leave in search of new opportunities. The population of Lynch, once in the thousands, has now shrunk to just a few hundred. The Grand Hotel is gone, and many of the houses stand empty. The city feels like a shadow of its former self, a giant's clothes on a much smaller frame. Today, Lynch and the nearby town of Benham are trying to hold on to their history. They are part of the Kentucky Coal Museum, which is housed in the old company store in Benham. You can tour a mock mine and see artifacts from the peak of the coal era. In Lynch, the old bathhouse, where thousands of miners would wash off the coal dust after their shift, still stands. It's a massive, imposing building, a silent monument to the thousands of lives that were dedicated to coal. These towns aren't completely empty, but they are haunted by the memory of what they once were, bustling capitals of a fallen kingdom. Long before coal was king, The rivers were the lifeblood of Kentucky. On the banks of the Cumberland River, towns like Creelsboro and Mill Springs thrived. Creelsboro in Russell County was one of the earliest settlements in the region. It was a bustling river port. In the 19th century, steamboats would navigate the Cumberland, bringing goods and people to this remote part of the state. The town had hotels, shops, and a busy landing where tobacco, timber, and other local products were loaded onto boats bound for Nashville and beyond. For a time, it was the most important commercial center in the area. Just down the river in Wayne County, Mill Springs was another vital hub. Its claim to fame was its massive water-powered grist mill, built in 1877. This mill was an industrial marvel for its time, grinding corn and wheat for the entire region. Farmers would travel for days to bring their grain to Mill Springs. Like Creelsboro, the town was a busy river port. Together, these two towns formed a critical link in the river-based economy of southern Kentucky. Their fortunes rose and fell with the level of the water and the schedules of the steamboats that served them. The beginning of the end for these river towns was the arrival of the railways. Trains were faster, more reliable, and could reach places the rivers couldn't. Slowly but surely, commerce began to shift away from the water and towards the iron tracks, but the final blow for Creelsboro and Mill Springs came in the mid-20th century with the construction of Wolf Creek Dam. The dam, built to control flooding and generate hydroelectric power, created the massive Lake Cumberland. This ambitious project submerged parts of the old river valley, forever changing the landscape and cutting off the towns from their historic waterway. Today, Mill Springs is preserved as a historic site. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has beautifully restored the grist mill, which still operates on special occasions. You can visit the old Brown Lanier house and imagine what life was like when the river was the main highway. Creelsboro, however, has mostly vanished. A few old buildings and a historic marker are all that's left. The most famous landmark is Rock House, a natural bridge that was once a landmark for riverboat pilots. These towns are quiet now, their busy ports silenced, but they stand as a testament to a time when life in Kentucky flowed at the pace of the river. Just as rivers created towns, so too did the railways. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the expansion of the railroad across Kentucky gave birth to hundreds of small communities. These towns popped up along the tracks, serving as depots for passengers, freight, and agricultural goods. Rocky Hill in Edmonson County was one such place. It grew up around the Louisville and Nashville railroad line. It was a classic railway town, with a depot, a general store, a hotel for travelers, and a small cluster of houses. For the local farmers, the railway was a lifeline, allowing them to ship their produce to distant markets. Similarly, Gravel Switch in Marion County owes its entire existence to the railway. Its name tells you everything you need to know. It was a place where a switch, or a sidetrack, was built to allow trains to pull off the main line. This siding was used to load gravel from a nearby quarry, which was then used as ballast for the railroad tracks. A small community grew around this industrial function. It was never a big place, but it was a vital cog in the great machine of the railroad. The lives of the people in towns like Rocky Hill and Gravel Switch were set to the rhythm of the train whistle. The decline of these railway towns was as predictable as their rise. The advent of the automobile and the development of the national highway system changed everything. People were no longer reliant on passenger trains for travel. Trucks became a cheaper and more flexible way to transport goods. The railways, once the arteries of the nation, began to see less and less traffic. The small depots in towns like Rocky Hill and Gravel Switch were the first to be closed down. With their primary reason for being gone, the towns began to wither. The stores closed, the hotels emptied, and families moved away. Today, Rocky Hill is a quiet, unincorporated community. The railway tracks are still there, but the trains rarely stop. A few old buildings hint at its more prosperous past, but it's mostly a collection of houses and a church. Gravel Switch is even smaller, little more than a name on a map and a few scattered homes. The switch is long gone and the quarry is closed. These towns are perfect examples of how technology can both create and destroy. They are ghosts of the railway era, silent reminders of a time when the sound of a steam engine was the sound of progress and prosperity. In the western part of Kentucky, near the borders of Illinois and Missouri, a different kind of mineral created a boom: fluorspar. This colorful, crystalline mineral was essential for making steel, aluminum, and chemicals. For much of the 20th century, the Crittenden and Livingston County area was the fluorspar capital of the United States, producing the vast majority of the nation's supply. The towns of Marion and Smithland were at the heart of this industry. Marion, the county seat of Crittenden County, became the bustling center of the fluorspar district, with mining companies setting up their headquarters there. Smithland, located at the confluence of the Ohio and Cumberland rivers, also played a crucial role. While it was an old, historic river town in its own right, its proximity to the mines gave it a new lease of life. The fluorspar was transported to Smithland to be loaded onto barges and shipped up and down the Ohio River. The mining industry brought jobs and money to the region. Miners, many of whom were also part-time farmers, found steady work in the dozens of small mines that dotted the landscape. The economy of the entire area was built on this one, unique mineral. The boom, however, could not last forever. In the latter half of the 20th century, the industry faced a double threat. Firstly, the easily accessible deposits of fluorspar began to run out. The mines had to go deeper, which made the process more expensive and dangerous. Secondly, and more importantly, cheaper fluorspar began to be imported from other countries like Mexico and China. The Kentucky mines simply couldn't compete on price. One by one, the mines shut down. The last major fluorspar mine in the United States, located near Marion, closed its doors in the 1990s. The end of the fluorspar industry was a devastating blow to the region. Marion and Smithland, while still functioning towns, have struggled to replace the jobs and economic activity that the mines provided. Today, you can still see the legacy of the industry. There are old, abandoned mine shafts and processing plants scattered throughout the countryside, slowly being reclaimed by nature. The Ben E. Clement Mineral Museum in Marion houses a stunning collection of fluorspar crystals, a glittering reminder of the industry that once defined this part of Kentucky. The towns remain, but the boom that built them is now just a memory. Out in the flat, fertile plains of the Jackson Purchase region in far western Kentucky, you'll find a cluster of towns with stories tied closely to the land. Blandville, in Ballard County, was once a place of great importance. Founded in the 1840s, it became the county seat and a thriving educational center, home to the Blandville College. For decades, it was the most prominent town in the county, a hub of politics, commerce, and learning. It seemed destined for a bright future, a beacon of culture in this agricultural landscape. Its grand courthouse and college buildings were a source of immense local pride. Not far away are the small communities of Lovelaceville and Lowes. These were classic farming towns, built to serve the needs of the surrounding agricultural community. Lovelaceville, also in Ballard County, grew up around a crossroads, with a few general stores, a blacksmith, and churches. Lowes, in neighboring Graves County, was much the same. These towns were the places where farmers came to buy supplies, sell their crops, and socialize. Their fortunes were directly linked to the success of the harvest. A good year for tobacco and corn meant a good year for the merchants in town. The decline of these towns came slowly, a gradual fading rather than a sudden collapse. For Blandville, the trouble began in the 1880s when the railway decided to bypass the town. Instead, the tracks were laid through nearby Wickliffe, which also happened to be on the Mississippi River. Commerce and influence quickly shifted to Wickliffe, and in 1882, the county seat was moved there. Blandville College eventually closed, and the town began a long, slow decline. For Lovelaceville and Lowes, the changes in modern agriculture and the rise of larger regional shopping centers made their small-town stores redundant. People started driving to bigger towns like Paducah for their needs. Today, these towns are whispers of their former selves. Blandville is a quiet, unincorporated community. The grand courthouse is long gone, and only a few old homes and a historical marker tell the story of its past glory. Lovelaceville and Lowes are much the same, collections of houses with a church or two still holding services. The old general stores are either boarded up or have been torn down. They are places that time and progress have largely passed by. They serve as a quiet tribute to the small farming communities that were once the backbone of rural Kentucky, their stories written in the rich soil around them. Not all ghost towns are from the 19th century, some are much more recent, their demise a story of modern economic change. Take Lawton in Carter County. In the early 20th century, this town was a fiery industrial center. It was home to several brickyards, most notably, the General Refractories and the Harbison Walker Refractories. These plants produced high-quality fire bricks, the kind needed to line the massive industrial furnaces used in the steel industry. The town was built around these plants. The kilns burned day and night, and the town's life was dictated by the shift whistles. Another modern ghost is the West Kentucky Raceway in Crittenden County. This wasn't a town, but it was a place that brought a community together every weekend. It was a dirt track, a place where local heroes in souped-up cars would chase glory under the Friday night lights. For decades, the sounds of roaring engines and cheering crowds filled the air. Families would come from all around, packing the wooden bleachers to watch the thrilling, chaotic spectacle of dirt track racing. It was a center of social life, a place where people gathered to share their passion and escape the grind of the working week. The end for Lawton came when the steel industry, which it so heavily depended on, went into decline. As steel mills across the country closed down, the demand for fire bricks plummeted. The brickyards in Lawton could no longer sustain themselves. They shut down in the mid-20th century, and with the jobs gone, the town emptied out. The West Kentucky Raceway met its end for different reasons. Rising operating costs, changing entertainment habits, and perhaps a simple waning of interest led to its closure. The roar of the engines fell silent, and the track was abandoned. Today, Lawton is a true ghost town. The ruins of the massive brickyards still stand, crumbling monuments to a forgotten industry. The empty houses and overgrown streets are eerie and silent. It feels like a place where everyone just up and left one day. The West Kentucky Raceway is similarly haunting. The track is overgrown with weeds, the bleachers are rotting, and the old concession stand is collapsing. You can almost hear the ghosts of the cheering crowds and the phantom roar of V8 engines. These places remind us that ghost towns aren't just a thing of the distant past. They are still being created, leaving behind stories of industry, passion, and communities that have faded away.